Very professional.
Yeah.
The pictures and then what to do.
Not a joke. Okay, Shavua Tov Rabotai, and Bekiim Bahalacha 2, and we are on day 6. And if you're following in the books, that'll be on page 26. Shem Hashem. That's correct. Okay, so we have over here a beautiful daily mitzvah that the Hafez Chaim brings down, and it's based on what is written in the introduction of Sefer HaChinuch. There are 6 mitzvot that are called mitzvot timidiyot. These are the constant mitzvot that a person can fulfill them any moment of the day. That means technically, any time a person thinks about one of these mitzvot, he gets a mitzvah deoraita. And there's 6 of them. So imagine if a person just all day long just thinks about the 6 mitzvot, every second he gets another mitzvah deoraita. Just try to calculate how many mitzvot he's able to pick up in the course of the day. Although the Hafez Chaim says you can do it at any time, he does write in Sefer Shmirat Halashon that the best time to do this mitzvah is actually right now, in between tefillat shacharit and breakfast. He says before you eat, you should try to fulfill this mitzvah. So we're going to be able to do it today, actually in the right time. What are the 6 constant mitzvot that a person is able to fulfill? So we go in order. Number 1, the Amin b'Hashem. So the first thing is, of course, to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means that God exists. Okay, you have to believe there's a God in the world. But believing that God exists does not necessarily mean that you believe that there's one God. Has Shalom, a person can say, I believe that God exists. And there's a God of the heaven, and there's a God of the earth, but so that needs to be followed up. Besides that you believe God exists, number 2 would be Shelo la'amin zulato, that you don't believe that there's any other God. You see, in the times of the Talmud, or even before that, when they used to worship Avodah Zarah, so they used to do both. They used to believe in God, and they used to believe in Avodah Zarah. They believed in duality, Has Shalom, and which would have a great contradiction. So it's not enough to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have to believe in the exclusivity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that there is no other power and there's no other God. Like we say in the Berich Shemeh on Shabbatot, Vela al bar elahin samichna. Bar elahin would mean an angel. They call him a Bnei Elohim. Or Bnei Elohim can mean a prophet. Or Bar elahin, God forbid, in the most literal sense, can mean a son of God, which we know, Hadva Shalom, other religions, they made the trilogy. So therefore we say, Vela al bar elahin samichna. We don't trust anything but HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ela belahad shmaya dehu elad dikshot. We believe in the one true God. And that's number 3. Number 3 comes along and teaches us that we must liyahado. Liyahado means is that we must believe in God that is one, which is a separate belief system. You can believe in that that is a God, and there's no other God, but that maybe God has different parts to him, and maybe God has different divisions. No. Hashem is Echad, and the way we explain it in the Patach Eliyahu, like it says, Antu had vela behushban. What does that mean? Antu had vela behushban. You are one, but not one of numerics. One of numerics is followed by 2. You're not a one that has a 2. It's not a one that's in the numbers. It's just a one in the perfect sense. Number 4 is the ahaba oto. Of course, that means to love God. The person has to love Hashem. And how do you come to love Hashem? It's a good question. So there's different ways. One way Maimonides says is look at the creation. And you start to look at the beauty of the creation, and you start to say, wow, and all this creation he did for us. So that would bring a person to Ahabat Hashem. Furthermore, when a person starts to recognize how much God does for him, a person will become filled with the love of Hashem, even though he knows he's unworthy, and then Kadosh Baruch Hu expends so much kindness. So that would bring him to Ahabat Hashem. Now there is a famous Gemara in Berachot that says that when you say Kiryat Shema in the morning, so you're supposed to have your tefillin on. And it says whoever doesn't wear the tefillin in the morning when they say Kirat Shema, he is bearing false testimony. Why? Because you're saying, but you're not wearing it. So therefore you're reading words, but you're not following the words, so it's like you're bearing false. You don't believe in what you're saying. So the Rav writes over here from the Sefer Haredim that when a person says in the morning, well, if you're not going to fill your heart with the love of God, you're also bearing false testimony because you're just reading it. The question is, do you love God? You don't even know what you're saying. So just like we have to wear tefillin in order to justify the pasuk of tefillin, you'd have to fill your heart with love of Hashem, at least for a moment, at the time that you're reading Ve'ahavta et Hashem, which a conscious effort to love Hashem. So that would be the fourth mitzvah. And the fifth mitzvah would be liyir'a oto, that is fear of God. And of course, the fear of God, there's different levels of fear. One fear is the lower level, which is called yir'at ha'onesh, fear of punishment. Now, I say it's a lower level, but we wish that the people would even be on that level, that the deterrent for them not making sins is because they are worried about a penalty. But the higher level of yir'ah is called yir'at haromemut. You have fear of the fact that God is so exalted. It's almost like, why does a person fear the rabbi? He doesn't fear the rabbi because he's worried that the rabbi is going to curse him out. He's not worried about, maybe sometimes, but he's not worried about that the rabbi is going to punish him. He has fear because of the stature. It's like when you're in front of, when you go to Hechal of Shalom. So you were afraid. You weren't afraid that he's going to punish you, but you're not because you're in front of a great person. So that's the higher level of fear. That would be like reverence, we would call that. That's the better word. Not fear, but reverence. And that would be number 5. Now, number 6, so that would be a person has to avoid following the whims of one's heart or one's eyes. And here, the rabbi goes on a very, very long essay, which actually a stinging and very painful rebuke over here, talking about how one has to be careful not to go after his eyes. As we say every day in the Kirat Shema, v'lo taturu, aharer lebavchem v'aharei einayim. Now, lebavchem means don't let your heart ponder things that would be heretical. Don't think of things that, God forbid, would be anti-God, or things that would be, forbidden thoughts, philosophical thoughts that you're not allowed to ponder. Fine. That is less common than the second issue, which is letting a person's eyes wander freely. And Maimonides tells us that there's a common misconception that people come along and say, what did I do? I didn't do anything. I just looked. Did I touch her? Did I, Shalom, make a sin? It doesn't cost me anything, doesn't cost you anything. And the Rabbi says, no. The beginning of all sin, of course, begins with the heart and the eyes. The eyes, of course, bring the sin and the desire inside, and the heart has a pleasure, and then, God forbid, it's a slippery slope before a person actually makes the sin. And therefore the Torah forbids not only the act, but the Torah already forbids the actual looking. And it's not offense. You shouldn't think, that's rabbinical, but it's okay. If I won't come to the sin, then I'm okay. No, there's learning that it's is the sin itself. It's not, even if it doesn't lead to anything, so that would be forbidden. And again, in this generation, one has to be extra careful, especially now we're in the spring and the summer months, where obviously the dress code in the street becomes a little more, or a little, I would say a little more, but actually comes a little less. And therefore, one has to be really careful that his eyes shouldn't wander around. And this is the subject of shmirat einayim. Obviously, it's not an easy thing. That's why the Torah had to forbid it, because the Torah knows that the Yetzer Hara has great attraction towards this. So especially, a person shouldn't find himself in places where the test is even greater. So therefore, in the older days, for example, a person would not walk by where the ladies were doing the laundry, because they would stay by the river and they would lift up their, their dress in order not to get wet. And somebody would walk by there, might be tempted to see something especially if you had a different way to go. Especially if you had an alternate route. The Gemara says, why did you choose the route where the ladies are standing doing the laundry when you had a way to avoid it? Unless there was no other way, and you go and you close your eyes. Again, this would be, careful. And the Rabbi talks about pools and beaches and all these type of things that really people have to be extra careful in the way they're dressed and where they go, what they're exposed to. And again, we cannot talk about it. We cannot talk about it enough. The Borei Nevuchim explains that lustful thoughts are worse than lustful acts. And that needs analysis. Objection sustained. So you have over here, how can a lustful thought be worse than a lustful act? So Maimonides says when somebody commits a lustful act, he succumbed to his animalistic tendencies and rebelled against God's commandment. Even so, he has still not tainted his mind, the most important part of his being. When someone allows himself to dwell on lustful thoughts, however, he has tainted the most exalted element. The collateral damage of lustful thoughts, therefore, is far more serious and long-lasting than that of a lustful act. There's a big hadush over there. That's the Gemara says that in Gittin, kashin hirurei avera me'avera. And another reason might be is not only because you're defiling your head, which is separates a person from an animal, but it might be also the act has a finite time. The person did the act. The mind, however, is able to imagine over and over again, and it never ends. And therefore, it's just a much longer operation. Therefore, one has to be careful of where he lets his mind, wander. This great rabbi called Hafetz Chaim warned that if someone fails to observe the Torah rules about what eyes are permitted to see, he can be assured he will be stricken with blindness in the world to come. This is serious stuff over here, Rabotai. Again, a lot of this is great musar. Basically, the lesson over here is, and we said this recently on a video that I made for Bekiim, which is an organization that is promoting guarding one's eyes. And they asked me to say some words on it, and I did say what the Ben Ish Chai writes. The Ben Ish Chai says that just like the body sees, the physical body, the soul also has eyes. And the Ben Ish Chai said that after 120, so the soul is able to elevate itself to what's called Gan Eden Elyon, at the upper gates of Gan Eden. And in that place, the pleasure of the soul is specifically by vision, by seeing. Seeing what? The Shekhinah. Like it says, Tzadikim yoshvim b'nehenim b'ziv Shekhinah. The Tzadikim sit, there's crowns on their heads, and they benefit from the ziv Shekhinah, from the splendor of the Shekhinah. So he talks about that a neshama needs to have good vision in order to see the Shekhinah. So he says, based on your vision, not your eye prescription. We're not talking about that. Even if a person wears glasses, that does not necessarily mean that he's going to have bad neshama vision. Neshama vision is based on how strict he was in guarding his eyes. If he guarded his eyes good in this world, so then he'll have a clarity in the next world in Gan Eden Elyon, and he'll be able to see the Shekhinah. So these are definitely things that people struggle with, but the good news is, just because you struggled with it yesterday, today's a new day, and does not mean that all is wasted and all in vain. God accepts the shuvah, and if a person can make an acceptance upon himself, from here on in, a person is going to at least make an effort. Some people, when it comes to this mitzvah or this averah, they just they relegated themselves. It's not my item. I don't care about it. I'm not going to be careful, and they just forget about it. They say, you know what? There's 613 mitzvot. There's 612 that I'll be careful on. This one over here, they just put it in brackets or maybe parentheses, and that's not good. The person should, and by the way, every time he overcomes is a great victory. You shouldn't think, well, today I succumbed 6 times and I only was able to restrain 3 times. That's great. The 3 times that you restrain is tremendous value. Every time a person restrains himself more and more, again, it brings to himself the highest levels of Kedusha. So again, he gives a very, very strong, a rebuke of here. You could read it on pages 26 and on pages 27. You read that, you're really going to get. You're not going to want to go in the street. By the way, if you read that, you're not going to go in the public domain. And the rabbis, of course, is right. Okay, now let's go to on page 28. Some have the custom that they make a parchment. They have a sofer making for them a parchment, and on the parchment they write the menorah, the lamdasayam miginot minoshir. You have one there, really? Beautiful. Let's show it to our members over there. They do a right, exactly. So they have this over here in the shape of a menorah, and on top of it, it says, like we see over here, Shiviti Adonai, the Negdi Tamid, and they actually leave this in this. Can I rip this for a second? No, they actually leave this in the Siddur. So it's like, not like this. So when they and it's straight up. So when they're praying, they see the Hashem's name in front of them constantly to fulfill, not as a bookmark, but as a mark in itself. So they should always be looking at the Shem Hashem Yud Ke Vav Ke, and that's something that everybody should have in their Siddur. Also, they have some other names on it also. This is a very basic one. Some of them actually have the Shemot of the Parnasa on it, and Nabechawach, Lashet Tevot, and some other things. Again, they leave it in the Siddur, so it's hanging from the top. It's protruding from the top, so they always see the name of Hashem in front of them, because like we learned in the previous Shi'ur, Shiviti Hashem, the Negdi Tamid. Now, the Mishnah Berurah just bemoans the fact that many people are not careful regarding the parchment, and therefore sometimes you see it on the floor, sometimes it slips out of the Siddur, and it's discarded, and therefore he just says that one has to be very careful. I mean, Hashem's name is on these parchments over there, and therefore he should be careful. He says, Yakut Yosef says that the custom is to position the place card displaying the Shiviti permanently in front of the synagogue, which we do that. We have these posters that we hang up. Some have B'dik Shemeh, some have Modim de Rabbanan, and some have the menorah on the walls of the synagogue, and that's something that is permissible. Some actually have the Pesukim on the Tzedakah box. All these things are part of the custom. And now we get to the next item. There's a lot of material that he gave us today, and the next item is a very important. And that is when one is doing mitzvot, the less publicity, the better. There is a value of doing things low-key and under the radar, and not flaunting one's merit. Actually, as a matter of fact, the greatest tzaddikim are called tzaddik nistar. Tzaddik nistar means on the outside they look very regular and very, very plain, and you wouldn't know exactly what they're doing. You think about the simple people, what are they anyway? But they're masters at masquerading all their good deeds, and there's many benefits of doing that. The Chavot HaLevavot says if a person's doing mitzvot in order to gain compliment or accolade or to gain status, so therefore he's actually not serving God, he's serving himself. The mitzvot becomes self-serving. And I don't want to say that it's a form of avodah zarah, but it's a form of avodah zarah. Because, and who's the avodah zarah? The person himself. And the pasuk says, Lo yeh becha el zar, that you should not make yourself a foreign god. Because now already he's using the mitzvot in order to promote himself. And that's not the purpose of the mitzvot. The mitzvot is only to promote the glory of God. And furthermore, he brings down from the tzaddikim that when a person does the mitzvot and he receives an accolade or receives a compliment, or he does it in the public eye, so then God himself does not give the reward. The reward is given through the angels. Only mitzvot that are done solely l'shem shamayim does God himself give the reward. And I think there's a difference. If the angels give the reward, it's open to prosecution. When God gives the reward, there's no prosecution. What do you mean prosecution? Let's say other angels come along and say, hey, he's not worthy. What are you giving him the reward for? Then it becomes a debate. And I saw brought down from the books that people that do the mitzvot in a way that's invisible, that people don't know, they become invisible to the prosecuting angels. which is a big hadush. There was one great rabbi called the Ribnitzer Rebbe. You can go visit him. He's buried in Monsey, New York. One of the great tzaddikim. Oscar recently made a book about him. You have to read it. The Ribnitzer. Tzaddik Yesod Olam. Anyway, the Ribnitzer lived in Russia. And, at that time, you weren't able to serve mitzvot, do mitzvot. You did mitzvot at risk of being caught by the KGB and then being sent to Siberia, for the rest of your life. Anyway, the Ribnitzer is in his house and he's learning. And sure enough, KGB knocks on the door and he's sitting at his dining room table. He's learning. And they barge in. So he's sitting at the table. So the KGB turns to the Rebbitzin and says, "Where's the rabbi?" And he's sitting right there learning. And he says, she says, "I don't know." And they're looking. The rabbi's just sitting there learning. They went to the whole house. They made bidikat hametz. They didn't find anything. After they finished, okay, they leave. So the Rebbe said, "What was that?" He says, "Einayim nahim v'lo yiru." They have eyes, but they don't see. They didn't see. He said, "I went rogue. I went invisible on them. They didn't see me." That's the tzaddikim. They're in front of him. He's just sitting there. They don't see him. Explanation is that tzaddikim that do mitzvot in a private way, Borei Olam is able to make them invisible, that the enemies will not see them. There was one time, one of the great rabbis. What was the rabbi? One of the hidden tzaddikim. One of the hidden tzaddikim. No, but they know that these people had. What was his name? It'll come to me. So in Eretz Israel, they used to go visit the great tzaddikim. They used to visit the, so they used to get in the car and go visit the Miron, let's say, to Mishra Yochai. So the son of this rabbi came along, Rapatilon. Rapatilon, his name was Rapatilon. Anyway, big tzaddik. You Google Rapatilon, you see the stories about him. So his son says, "Daddy, I want to go with you." So they said, "But there's no room in the car. We have 6 people already. And if the cop stops you, you get a ticket." So the rabbi tells the son, "Don't worry, you come with it, they won't see you." Anyway, sure enough, they're in the car, he's sitting on the lap. The cop stops him. He looks in the car, many people, "You're okay, go." I told you, I didn't see you. Finished. He went invisible. So that means that tzaddikim, tzaddik Nistad, is able to make himself Nistad. And I'm the Okay, that already shows you the power of keeping things hidden. Unfortunately today, where everything is broadcasted today, if a guy eats a bowl of spaghetti, he puts it on Facebook so the whole world can see it, which is a nonsense thing. Or the more so a person does a mitzvah, he can't wait to let everybody know. A guy comes into shul, Tikkun Hatzot last night. He makes what happened over there? Letting everybody that he made Tikkun Hatzot. That's it. He says, "I'm too tired. Tikkun Hatzot. I stayed up late last night. Sitting on the floor. My back is hurting me from sitting on the floor crying for the Beit HaMikdash." What do you mean? You lost the whole mitzvah. What do you do? You did it so you can flaunt it the next day? Well, another guy who fasts, he can't wait to let everybody know that he's fasting. No. I need tzaddikim. Tzaddikim. The tzaddikim don't tell us that you're fasting. You want to be ta'anit? There was one rabbi called Rabbi Yaakov Kuli. Rabbi Yaakov Kuli was once on a 72-hour fast, 3 days. The last hour he went to visit somebody, they gave him a cup of coffee. He drank the cup of coffee because he didn't want to tell the guy he was fasting. It was better for him to break the fast of 72 hours. He made hatara on himself not to drink. Today what the guy would say, no, he can't wait to let everybody know what type of tzaddik he is. In the olden days, they didn't let him. One time I was in Hong Kong and we were with a family. The lady said every time we went to a different stop, they stopped for drinks, they stopped for snacks, lunch. She doesn't eat. She didn't say anything. She was quiet, but I'm noticing that she doesn't eat. So I said, "Mrs. So-and-so, this is kasher. I'm eating, you can eat." So she was with great hesitance because she had to answer me. She said, No. I said, wait, no, you have to eat. We're traveling from the morning to the night. She said, "Please, Rabbi, don't say it, but I'm fasting today." But she said it with great, hesitance. She didn't want to say it. I said, "Why are you fasting today? There's no ta'anit." She said, "No." She looks around and she says, "That's my custom. Mondays and Thursdays I fast. Mondays and Thursdays, Bahab. What do you fast Mondays and Thursdays for my children? That they should be tzaddikim and they should marry good families." But That's a tzaddikin. She didn't tell anybody. She kept it quiet until the rabbi pressed it out of her. And even then, she didn't show me her credentials and all that. She said it's an am. But that's already something that a person has to be very, very careful as well. If somebody hides his good deeds from others, he will be hidden from the view of the punishing angels. That's what Ishit Chokhmah says. Rabbi writes, if someone is unsuccessful in hiding his good qualities and accomplishments and others praise him, he should remind himself that he has not even done 1/10,000th of what God he owes God. Of course. Which is you think because a person comes and compliments you, therefore you should believe it, don't believe it. The people a lot of times, first of all, false flatter you. You have to know that. When a guy comes, oh, you're unbelievable, 99% of the time, he needs something from you, either because you have a certain item you can offer him, so therefore they what? They false flatter. So you don't believe them. That's the whole trick. Don't believe them. Discounted by 99%. And even if you say, well, the compliment is earned, you think that you're doing enough for God, that you deserve that compliment. If that person would only know how much you're in contempt and how much you are undeserving, when God praised Avraham Abinu, what did Avraham Abinu say? Anochi afar va'efet. What am I? I'm dust. I'm ashes. And of course, one has to be careful. Even if he's able to keep his mitzvot under the radar, he should not praise himself for that. The guy says, no, I'm very anav. I'm very humble. So you're singing the praise that you're anav? Shlomo HaMelech said, Yehalelcha zar velo picha. Let a stranger praise you, but not coming from your own mouth. Which means that's the most obnoxious thing when a person praises himself. Yehalelcha zar. If you're lucky that somebody else praises you, fine. Velo picha. There was one guy, he's praising himself. Oh, look, you know what I do, you know how good I am. So the rabbi told him, Yehalelcha zar velo picha. He says, you're reading it wrong. Yehalelcha zar. Let strangers praise you. Velo, but if they don't, picha. Then you have to do it yourself. he made a whole hadush on the pasuk. He changed the whole pasuk around. So therefore, the Rab says over here, גם בזאת צריך אדם לדעת אם חס ושלום פיתוי עשו לבעל עצות מעשה טוב, מה שיהיה בפרהסיה, which means a person has to use strategies not to do mitzvot publicly. Don't misunderstand what we're saying. Now tomorrow a guy's going to say, I'm not going to minyan anymore. I'm praying at home. I don't want anybody to see me. I'm going to pray in my house. I don't want to do anything. Of course not. What he means over here, the stuff that has to be b'farhesya, of course you do b'farhesya. We know that already. But if you can hide as much as you can without the people knowing that you don't need a minyan and so on and so forth, especially you shouldn't be over-religious in front of the tzaddikim. Sometimes you see people in front of the hachamim, they want to show they're more religious than the rabbi. What are you trying to do? You're trying to showboat? You're trying to make yourself upstage the rabbi? In front of the rabbi. A person wants to do a humrah, a stringency that nobody's doing. All these things that you follow with David HaMelech said, Etalech betom levavi bekerev beti. The person wants to go betom lev, which means with stringencies, bekerev beti, in the privacy of his own home. But in public, he has to be me'orab b'beriyot. He has to be normal with the people, not because today they use the religion as this platform in order to showcase himself. I don't eat this. I don't do this. You're losing the whole purpose. Once the religion becomes a crown that you're using for your own benefit, like it says in Pirkei Avot, udishtamesh betagah halaf. Those that use the crown and the glory of Torah for themselves. There was one great rabbi, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, alav Shalom. Whenever he would go, let's say, to a doctor or something, so they would offer him a discount. Hakam, please. He said, no, I don't want to use the Torah for any benefits. I'm not looking to get any, you're using the Torah, using your status, using your rabbinical credentials in order to get a advantage. He didn't want. He felt that that's taking advantage. He didn't want any benefit besides the L'Shem Shamayim that he's serving God. The Benu Bachya writes that, again, we said this, God, he praises on Abraham, and nonetheless, he still said he's afar va'efer. Go to page 30. Peder your etz rules that one may not display publicly that one observes pious stringencies. There was one guy in Deal synagogue, regular Syrian guy, and he started to wear tefillin the Benutam. The second pair of tefillin. And the Shulchan Aruch writes that only somebody that's mefursam b'hasidut, only somebody that's known to be very pious, should put on the second pair of tefillin. So Rabbi Yimtov Yedid, Alav Hashem, was there, and he went into this guy. He said, "Atam mefursam b'hasidut, yeah, boom, ya ma'aretz." He went to the movies last night. Mefursam b'hasidut. He said, "I was in Halab, and the great Rabbi Moshe Mizrahi, was Hasidah Kadisha, didn't wear the tefillin benutam, and if he wore it, in private." The rabbi was giving a musad to the guy. What do you think you are? But again, I'm not saying that that's the halacha or not the halacha. It could be by wearing the tefillin benutam, which today everybody's wearing it. So therefore, it's not a sign of hasidut anymore. Maybe in the olden days when a guy put on the benutam, he was considered, special. Today, said everybody should wear the benutam after they get married. So it could be that special status has been, diluted a bit. But boy, did you learn something from the rabbi. There was one guy. He used to go to the mikveh every morning. No problem. He used to go to the mikveh every morning before tefillah. Beautiful. But what's the value of going to the mikveh in the morning at 4:00 in the morning if nobody's going to know? So what did he do? He would come into the netz with a towel around his neck. Now where's he going? Where's he coming from? From the casino? From the beach? Where's he coming from? He wants everybody to know. What's the towel? Mikveh. Which means the guy now is using the mikveh in order to, not a shah, but he's not a tzaddik. He's using the mikveh in order to promote himself. Because again, what's the value if nobody's going to know? They said, what's the? There was one time a guy. He loved to golf. He loves golfing every single day, 365 days a year. So every day golf course. So he tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he says, "Listen, I have to go on Kippur. So he says, you go on Kippur, no problem. I give you a heter." So the angels tell God, "How could you give me a heter to go golfing on Kippur?" He said, "Don't worry, you'll see. The first shot, 350 yards, hole in one." God says, "Who's he going to tell?" He can't tell anybody that he went hole in one on Kippur. That the whole fun of the hole in one is what? To tell everybody that you got it. Of course. No, if you got a hole in one, you can't tell anybody. That's the biggest game now. You better you didn't get it. So the same thing, how should people think the whole thing of doing these great mitzvot is able to now tell everybody. And he's telling you the opposite. The Peli Oetz is saying that if there's a chance that people will comment, especially people will comment disparagingly, complaining that he's showing off, it's much better that he desists from the pious behavior in public. Furthermore, he writes that the virtue of hiding pious acts, a gift in secret stifles anger. The pasuk says, "Matan baseter yichbe af." Mem bet yud aleph. Matan baseter yichbe af. What does that mean? Sometimes a person, he sees a poor man, and in public, he goes, "Oh, this is Nechbot Shabbat." He's embarrassed now in front of the whole kahal. You told him Chbot Shabbat, and he knows he's taking money because he doesn't have food for Shabbat. The rabbi told him, better you didn't give him instead of embarrassing him. It's better for him that he didn't have food for Shabbat. Instead, you come in the public and say, "This is food." Or he sees one time there was a guy. He was very careful in berachot. He loves the berachot. So there's a halacha that says if you see a midget, you make a beracha. So now he's at a wedding. He sees a midget. He says, "Ah!" He goes in the middle of the dance floor, he picks up the midget. Baruch Ata Hashem. The guy's, "What about me? Throw over here. Put me down over here." The guy's, he's mahmid to make a beracha. Meanwhile, he embarrassed the whole guy. So therefore, what are you doing? Because he wants to make me'ah berachot. He's careful. Meanwhile, he's holding the guy like over here like an etrog. So therefore, the halakha says a person has to be careful. A person has to be careful. Although it's mitzvot, it's important to do the mitzvah. עושה לו שעדות. שהוא לא לקח אותו למזבח, שם לו מסגר כל פעם הולך ובא, ברוך אתה, ברוך. כן. That's what he does. So you're embarrassing the guy. Right. So therefore, the Torah is saying you're not supposed to, first of all, make a spectacle of yourself when it comes to, or sometimes you see the people in the synagogue and they're acting in a way that arouses the people's curiosity. For example, you guys shaking in the Amidah, but excessive shaking. It's okay to shake in the Amidah, but if the person's shaking back and forth, all that, and you're making a spectacle of yourself. Maybe at home, they said when the Rabbi Akiva used to pray at home, they used to find him in one corner and used to be in a different corner after he finished the Amidah, because he prayed with a lot of kavanah. But in the Bet Knesset, he prayed regular. That's, again, something that one has to be careful. The same applies to all mitzvot. If someone performs these deeds in private, he will gain spirituality through them. In this way, he can succeed in the challenge of avoiding taking pride, especially also from the evil eye. This is the path chosen by those who perform mitzvot purely for Hashem's sake. The seven mitzvot asserts that anyone who performs acts of piety in public does not possess genuine fear of heaven. But I must make one more point. There is a value to do mitzvot publicly in front of your children. Otherwise, how are they going to know what you're doing? And that's why I saw once a derasha in the pasuk. It says, "Hanistarot laHashem Elokeinu, v'haniglot lanu ulbanenu," which means hanistarot laHashem. That's true. A person should try to keep his actions between him and God. However, v'haniglot, if he's going to do it in a revealed way, lanu ulbanenu. It's only for the benefit of your children, so they can see exactly what you're supposed to do. If a father is too big of a tzaddik nistar, that his children are not even aware. Now, it doesn't mean they have to be aware of everything. But at least they should be aware of certain mitzvot that the father's doing in order to be able to emulate. The Bekiim says, one advantage of performing acts of piety in private is that this way one avoids being mocked by scorners. One should also avoid displaying acts of piety in the presence of people who are greater to us scholars. It is a good thing, however, to perform acts of piety in the presence of simple, average people in the hope that they will emulate one's behavior. Again, and the children, of course. And one has to be the most important with the kavanah. What's his intentions? Hashem knows his intentions. Hashem knows discerns the intention of the heart. So we had a lot of things today. It's a big piece. Let's just review quickly. Number one, the 6 mitzvot to be diyot. That's the mitzvah that to believe in God, that there's no other God, that God is one. That's the mitzvah to love God, that fear of God, and not to go after one's thoughts and one's eyes. And then we had the whole talk about shmirat einayim, how careful one has to be. And then we talked about the shiviti, putting it in the sidur, hanging it up in front of the synagogue. And then we talked about the very, very big service of God, that things should be done in private. I remind you, the first tablets were given in public with a lot of fanfare on Har Sinai. What happened to those first tablets? They got shattered. The second tablets, nobody even knows when they were given. Yom Kippur. Nobody knows that Yom Kippur actually was the second day of Matan Torah. And why were they keepers? Because since it was done under the radar, it had a great durability. That's again teaching us that the more a person's able to strategize to do things beneath the radar, to be a little more nistar. Again, in a generation that today everything is public and everything is broadcasted, it's hard to imagine. But really, the Torah's opinion is the opposite. Akedat Yitzhak, which was one of the greatest acts in history. How many people were there? 2 people. CNN wasn't there, Fox News wasn't there, Yeshiva World, not all the newspapers. And after it was finished, Abraham didn't have a press conference to let everybody know what he did. He went back home, Yitzhak went back to Yeshiva. The Kodesh Kodashim on Yom Kippur, how many people go in? 1. And that's it. The greatest acts of Jewish religion are done with sin'ah. Like the Pasuk says, V'atznei alechet im Hashem Elohecha.